So I'm here for the two other people who couldn't make it from Kilu von Prince and Anna Krajinović. They say hello. And I will talk about timitive structures in the languages of Vanuatu. Just 1 second. Many of you will know what timitives are because many oceanic languages have this as a morphological category expressing something like warnings, negative purpose clauses, lest you fall in English, or complements of predicates like be afraid. Now, the oceanic languages we discuss here in Vanuatu don't have these constructions, but still we find that there is a kind of construction that has a very similar meaning, but it seems to be totally compositional, and so it is difficult to miss as a grammaticalized construction. So this is expressed by something like, in English, it would not be good if, and we characterize this therefore as irrealis subject clauses of evaluative predicates or ISEPs. Yeah. So we do think that there is a timitive marker in these languages too, but it's not so obvious. So the timitive modality, you find it under different names like apprehensive, avertive, and other terms have been used, express that there is an event that is epistemically possible and at the same time considered undesirable. So it's a combination of epistemic modality and evaluative meanings. Yeah. So they occur typically, as I said, in warnings, negative purpose clauses, complement clauses of verbs like fear, and as we know by the work of Frank Lichtenberg, for example, they are often expressed by highly grammaticalized markers in oceanic languages. Just to have 3 examples here in Mangapmula. This was one of the first uses of this term, apprehensive in this case. We find this clitic bo with this marker. In Tuapaita, we find the particle ada, and in Motlap we find the particle tiple with roughly the same kind of meaning. Yeah. Now, when we look at timitive marking in general, then in other languages too, we find a wide variety of marking of this category. So in Mangapmula, we also find a complementizer kokena. Yeah. In English, we find lest, a very rare complementizer with roughly this meaning. In German, I was not aware of that. The temporal adverbial nachher, as in Spiel nicht mit dem Hund, nachher beißt der dich noch. I tried to correct the slide and somehow the nice graph sort of didn't want to be inserted here. So nachher has this timitive meaning too. I was really surprised about that. We have final particles like aana in manam, also discussed by Lichtenberg, dain in amele, and modal markers like, for example, na in pamis, bo in ambai, and you find this quite frequently. Yeah? Now the expression "it would not be good" appears to be new as a timitive marker, but I think it is a timitive marker, and because of its transparency, its compositionality, it is easy to miss as a grammaticalized marker. There is an article by Vuillermet. She works on languages of South America, and a nice article with the title "Watch out, you might miss the apprehensive." So this is here part of a project, the Melatamp project, about the which is concerned about the tense aspect mukt and polarity marker in Melanesian languages. So we investigate the systems in 7 oceanic languages in Vanuatu and Papua New Guinea, primarily both based on corpus data, but we also switched to storyboard elicitations. And it became only clear through the storyboard elicitations that there is something like a timitive marker. We didn't look for it. Yeah? So these are the languages we are working on in Vanuatu, at least. Most of you will be familiar with storyboards. These are carefully designed series of pictures that tell a short story. As a researcher, you first tell the story following the pictures of in the language of communication, Bislama in our case. Then the speakers think about it and retell the story in their language with access to the pictures only, so not with the Bislama, because otherwise this turns out to be a kind of translation exercise, which we don't want. This allows for the occurrence of highly targeted expressions, like, for example, I remember that I had to wait for about a year in recording stories till I found my first hypothetical conditional clauses, and with the help of storyboards, we could sort of harvest them ad libitum. So it was really a great thing to do. Storyboards were, of course, used by other people, especially by Lisa Matheson and by van der Klok. I want to report about some of these storyboards that we used. We ran storyboards in 5 of our subject languages with 4 to 10 speakers, ideally 10 speakers, but it didn't always work out that way. I should stress that we did not look at timitives, we found them in some sense by accident. Because several of the storyboards just were by accident designed in this way that they elicitate these timitive structures. In general, sentences like that would sound like, or would be, if you translate them, as it would not be good if something like that happens, or it would be bad if something happens. Yeah? And as I said, these contexts could be described in hindsight as good contexts for timitives. One example here, this is the wood chopper storyboard, and this was done by Mike Frangi in Northumbrian. So there's a story, I don't want to retell the story, but this woman here tells her husband, don't go out in the woods and cut firewood, you might drop one piece of firewood and this might block the path. And you find here, just look at the translation, something like, it won't be good if you cut a tree and one piece of wood might block the path to the toilet, so it won't be good. Yeah. And this is repeated, so this is another picture of this storyboard. So Mary said to John, it is not good that I will just go outside at night, I will go to the toilet. This might not be the best translation here, but you also find this, it is not good structure here. Another example, it won't be good if I am wet, I will fall into the water and I will be wet. So again, this, it won't be good. So in the wood chopper story, we find that these were the number of speakers that we had here, that quite a number of them used this construction, it might not be, it would not be good. And the speakers here typically used this construction not just once, but 2 or 3 times. Yeah. The same in other storyboards, so Bill and the weather. So Bill, this is in a Canadian context, I think, says something like, I won't come to work in case there is bad weather. Well, it is bad that literally I was coming to work and it rained. So again, it would be bad if. Yeah? This is Nafsan. Yeah? Yeah, another example, I won't come to work in case the wind would blow. It would be bad if the wind would blow. Yeah?
Again, not quite as frequent, but we do find this structure, it would be bad here as well. Another storyboard that we designed, actually, or Kilu designed, this is about a festival in a village, and there's one guy who doesn't want to play volleyball, and he gives as an argument he's cut his finger, and the finger would start to bleed again, yes. And what he says here is it's not good for me to play and for the ball to hit my wound, then it might bleed again. So it's not good for me. We find the same structure here. The same story, this was again a different storyboard. They talk about a pig, and what they say here is, what they want to express is something like, it would be a shame if they were chasing the pig that my uncle promised. And what you find here is it would not be good if they were chasing the pig. Yeah. So we do find, in hindsight, we looked at the corpora and we did find some examples of timatives here as well, like for example in the Dakaka corpus of Kilu. Here, I'm afraid I might cut it and then miss you your open mouth. I don't know about the context here, but what is important here is the expression, it would not be good if I cut it. Yeah. Or in Nafsan here, the context is here, and I think that this small story is all that I can tell, but if I go further, I might make a wrong turn, and it is bad if I lie in your cassette. Maybe Nick knows about the precise situation. What is important here is that we have the same kind of expression. Yeah. Now, it seems that, at least this is a good hypothesis, that this form, it would not be good, that carries grammatical meaning. This is not very easy to prove because it's so transparent. It could be read in other ways, and we thought about how can we show that this is grammaticalized. We haven't done this yet, but one way would be to identify or to use the fact that grammatical meanings often are backgrounded. They are not in the foreground of the message. And so there is a difference between 12. Speaker A says we should go home. It would be bad if the doors are locked. B could say, no, it would not be so bad. We can climb over the fence. So B can address the second sentence of B directly. In 13, and I don't know how idiomatic this is, so A says we should go home lest the doors be locked. And B says, no, it would not be so bad. We can climb over the fence. This is not so bad, but it's sort of strange. You would expect something like, well, it wouldn't be so bad, or something like that. This well here indicates that we speaker B doesn't address the main message. And this is a famous semantic test, and we intend to check out whether these constructions with it would not be good or it would be bad fall into the second category here. Yeah. So now, but what we have shown, I think, is that in all 5 languages of our sample, speakers would use these ISAP sentences, and certain storyboard situations prompt these sentences, and the context in which we hear these sentences all can be categorized in hindsight as good context for the timitive mood. Of course, now we could construct specialized storyboards to look at this modality, this mix of epistemic and evaluative modality in a more targeted way. Yeah. We also find this in corpora. Yeah. Now, when we look now to other languages, the first step would of course be Bislamar, and those of you who are more competent in Bislamar might have noticed that in Bislamar we find something quite similar.
So Crowley, in his grammar, we looked it up, and he described it beautifully, actually, says that no good, which means bad, can also be used as an adverb expressing a warning with the meaning of what if or I hope not. So these are examples in his grammar. No good, Oli fannem out, you me too. What if the two of us are discovered and we don't want to be discovered? Yeah. Or no good, me stop wetten you Westen you long walk. Yeah. I hope I'm not wasting your time with this task. And there are more examples, like for example in this case by you make an umbrella no good by Irene. We will take an umbrella in case it rains, and this is something bad. So the rain is considered to be something bad. So Bislamar obviously seems to express timidity in a similar way. Yeah. And you can look at other languages. Kilu looked at Japanese and Korean, and in Japanese, for example, you find a similar way of expressing timatives with the predicate good, e. You may eat it, means here it's okay even if you eat it, and the eating seems to be something that you should be careful about. And in Korean, we find something similar. So for this sentence, with the meaning you have to read this book, expressed as if you don't read this book, it's not okay. And in Sio, another Oceanic language, we find something similar. So we think that ISEPs, these sentences, it would not be good, that are canonically used to express certain modal meanings, not just in one or two languages, but we can find them more often. And in particular, they express timitive mood, and we think that they can be seen as grammaticalized constructions to express this kind of mood, not by a single morpheme or so, which would be easy to spot by, but by a whole idiomatic construction. There might be maybe an areal preference for using this kind of marking, but as we have seen that it also occurs in Japanese or Korean, it might actually be more widespread. And that's the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is any question?
Yes.
Just to say shortly that the languages in the north, which, as you know, have evitative or apprehensive markers, indeed, no good is always the Bislama equivalent that is volunteered in translation.
So it's volunteered in translation.
Yeah,
so
I usually have it as with the complementizer. So no good say ikam or no good say bairen.
Yeah.
I didn't notice. I don't know, or my Bislama is not so good. I didn't notice that you can have just no good, but maybe that's true. Yeah, no good by Irene. Yeah, I think yes, that's possible.
Yes.
Sorry, are the complements always in the irrealis, or do they go across different types of moods, such as realis or irrealis, or across different tenses?
Most of them were irrealis, as far as I know. You had, I think, one example with Arealis in Northumbrian, as far as I know, but yeah. But typically it should be irrealis because it is a epistemic possibility. Warning should be expressed before it happened, in some sense.
Just a comment that I think you're right with the final slide, that it's very, very widespread, possibly even just a general universal in terms of people's languages. I mean, I think if you expand it to things that are negative, that aren't just no good, in English, I was thinking this is basically what bugger does in New Zealand and Australian English. Be a bugger if, yeah? So something negative, yeah, or no good, yeah, no, because you speak nice English, yeah. I mean, so, yeah, I think it's probably very, very widespread.
Yeah. Yes.
This being said, it seems to be different in Vera at least, for instance. So you get a clause introducing whatever thing, I don't know what word class it is, and it's got the same form as the ablative preposition. So as if you were saying, like, you know, off ablative, so away from. Ablative, so as if you'd say something like, you know, off that, you know, away that something. So, and there's no equivalent to no good.
I see.
Yes. Yes, you should have a look in Jehu, because we have two locutors here, and they have the speakers, and you can say in Jehu, ngazo choa, ngazo cho, and in the same, ngazo is bad, and cho is a irrealist marker. So maybe you can.
I see.
To mean the same, yes.